Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we have a very, very special guest, the founder and host of Next Level University, Kevin Palmieri. How you doing today, Kevin?
I'm living the dream, Ryan. I have to say this in front of the scenes because I said it behind the scenes. I was supposed to chat with Ryan last week. I canceled on literally the last minute, and I appreciate you having me on, and I respect your time very much.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on. I mean, I was looking at your background, and I was like blown away by what you do.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much.
So the number one question the audience probably has right now is, who is Kevin Palmieri?
Yeah, Kevin Palmieri is somebody who never thought he was going to be any level of successful, somehow achieved more success than he ever thought he would, realized that success and fulfillment aren't always necessarily connected. I ended up dealing with suicidal ideations and wanted to take my life. I left my old life behind and started a new life as a podcaster. And here we are 8 years later, 2,000 episodes later, and now I get to do podcasting as a massive part of our business. And I do an episode every day, and it's literally a dream come true. So it's been a very strange journey to get to where we are today.
Wow, that is an amazing journey, to say the least.
I appreciate it.
What were your dreams and goals growing up?
Strange, very strange. So, well, maybe not that strange. When I was young, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I loved WWF back in the day. It was like, wow, if I could do that, that would be amazing. Then I wanted to be a stuntman for a while. And then as I got older, I wanted to, and I pursued fighting professional mixed martial arts. Those were like the three occupations that I thought would be really, really cool when I was younger. And most of them, as you can see, involved violence and or pain. I don't know why I went that route, but yeah, those were the three that I thought would be really, really, really cool. And it was really cool to get the opportunity to train to fight. That was a really cool experience. I did that for, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years. Very interesting part of the journey.
So what was your background? Jiu-jitsu, wrestling?
Jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai were the two things that I trained. My grandfather was a professional boxer, and my great-grandfather was a boxer back in the day where they didn't use gloves. So there was that kind of ran in the family. And then the schools that were closest to me were grappling schools. So it just made sense to go learn that. And then I found one that had multiple disciplines, and I like striking better, I do. But I'm 5'4" on a good day, so my reach is terrible. So knowing the ground game is definitely helpful for me.
Well, yeah, I have a wrestling background, so I know how important
Yes, you
grappling is and all that. What shifted in you that made you want to improve? Like, what shifted that made you want to go into podcasting?
Massive pain. I think, unfortunately, for so many of us, pain is the necessity that we need to make a different decision. So I was somebody who thought, well, if I make X amount of dollars, then I'll be successful. Or if I date someone who looks a certain way, I'll be successful. Or if I get in really good shape, I'll be successful. And I had all those things happen, and none of those things made me feel successful. And I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. I don't know why I'm making any of the decisions I'm making. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I thought, well, let me start a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast, and let me just have cool conversations with cool people. And then hopefully the audience can be a fly on the wall of those deep conversations, and they'll learn something and I'll learn something, and it'll be this beautiful thing. That's how it started. I just wanted to have cool conversations like you and I are going to have. Then I really struggled with my mental health because of my job. And I said, well, I'm going to leave my job and see what this podcast thing can do. So when I started this, I didn't think this was going to happen. I never pictured getting to where we are today. I never knew I'd be able to do this full time and make money. I just loved it, and I fell in love with it, and I never wanted to give it up. And there's just something about being able to talk to people and potentially being able to impact people because of that. It's addicting, and you know how it feels, right? So once you get a taste of it, and then it becomes somewhat sustainable, then you start to say, okay, I don't ever want this to go away. And then you just kept doing it. So yeah, is way further than I thought it was going to be, honestly. And it's way harder than I thought it was going to be, also, honestly.
What's the most challenging thing that you kind of run into?
Time. So we do an episode every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We won't miss. That's in our branding. And if that's all we did, it wouldn't be that bad, right? Because this is my full-time job. But we have 105 clients and we have an 18-person team, and I'm married and I go to the gym 6 times a week. My business partner has exercised every day for like 1,500 days or something. There's just so much going on behind the scenes, and it's really hard to stick to a diet and an exercise regimen while trying to grow this business. It's hard to juggle personal life and business life. I mean, all of that is really challenging. The long days, that's not the end of the world. It's not too bad. But trying to juggle long days with early mornings and late nights and family and fitness and finance, every time you add one more thing into the fold, it gets a little bit harder. So we're trying to get really good at everything. And it's really hard to get good at one thing, never mind health, wealth, and love.
Yeah, I completely agree with
Right?
you there. 'Cause sometimes I'm wondering, can I get another hour in the day to make all this possible?
That's what I'm saying. And I don't want to give up any. I want to make money, and I want to have opportunity, and I want to be in really good shape and be strong and capable so I can take care of myself. And I want to spend time with my amazing wife. And there's only so much time in the day, and that is a reality we all have to deal with.
Yeah. What was your rock bottom moment?
I was 6 hours away from my home at the time, so I traveled a lot for work. I was in an industry called weatherization, so we would go into buildings, and it was our job to make them more energy efficient. But we worked on government and state contracts, so I spent weeks and or months at a time on the road, just living in hotels. So one morning I woke up. I was in New Jersey for work. Alarm clock went off at 5:15. I sat up, slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it, Ryan, is there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. One is saying you're stuck here forever. You're never going to get a job like this. You went from making $15 an hour doing labor to anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour doing this new job. You're never going to get that again. If you ever left, what would your friends say? If you ever left, what would your family say? And do you really think that podcasting is going to be the plan B? I mean, is that really what we're going to leave this 6-figure income and go all in on the podcast? My rock bottom moment, my rock bottom basement moment really was thinking to myself, well, if I just took my life, I would take all my problems with me. And that was the most challenging day ever, right? Here I am 6 hours away from anybody who cares, and just having all these doubts, all these limiting beliefs, all these toxic thoughts. Luckily, I reached out to my business partner, and he was able to help me and support me. And then that became the catalyst for the next piece of the journey. But yeah, that was the rock bottom basement. It doesn't get much lower than that moment. And luckily, I had somebody who I felt safe reaching out to. And who knows? I don't know if I would be here if that didn't happen, or what way I would be here. I don't know. But I always speak to the importance of having someone you feel safe reaching out to, because that's one of the reasons I am who I am today.
Yeah, I completely agree on that.
Right?
How was your mindset at that? How could you explain your mindset at that moment?
Stuck. Fixed. Just assuming the way I was that day was the way I was going to be forever. That was me in a nutshell. I didn't understand how much humans could change. I didn't understand how much you could evolve. I didn't understand that every time you learn something new, it becomes part of you. And I just assumed that the way I am today is the way I'm going to be forever. And I just felt stuck. And that's the biggest difference between who I was, and I'm the same person, but I am different in what I've learned and all that. I think I used to assume who I am is who I'm stuck being. Now I understand that so much of what I know today, I didn't even know last year. So there's so much opportunity for evolution. There's so much opportunity for growth. But to your point in the question, if your mindset convinces you that you can't grow, you unfortunately kind of get yourself stuck, because if you don't believe it's possible, you're probably not going to take action. So yeah, one word answer was fixed. I just had a very fixed mindset, unfortunately.
I think that is most people I mean, I've been in that same predicament too, where
Yeah.
you're going through something that you just feel stuck, like, and you don't think you can get past it.
Yeah, I think it's super common. It's super common. And it's very easy to feel that emotionally and then just shut down. But wherever you are today, you've most likely worked through 1,000 things to get here. Right? You at one point you didn't know how to tie your shoes, maybe you figured that out. You didn't know how to swim, you didn't know how to ride a bike. I think as we get older, our imagination goes away a little bit. And a lot of the problems we have, they require imagination and they require thinking to get out of. And I just think that a lot of us, we put ourselves into that position because we lose sight of our imagination in many ways, unfortunately. I mean, life will beat out your imagination. It will beat it out of you if you let it. It's not realistic, or do you really think you can do that? I mean, yeah, some of that is fair, but there's a lot of people who are doing things that are very unrealistic. And I would say I am probably one of those people. And if I listened to all the people who said it was stupid, I definitely wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree on that one. I mean, there are so many people that try to put you in a box and tell you what you can and can't do. So
Yes.
your imagination definitely goes away.
Yes, sir.
To your point, what was your first step in overcoming all this?
Leaving my job in a weird way. I don't know. When I left my job, I was 28, I think, 27, 28. And it was essentially the first time since I was 16 that I didn't have some sort of job and or the intention of getting another one. And it was really weird for me. When I left, one weight got lifted off of my shoulders and then a much different weight got put on my shoulders. And I just remember one day I was walking around my kitchen. I had moved in with my best friend at the time. He was renovating his home. He had a top bottom duplex and he was doing renovations. I was helping him. That was his dream. He was chasing his dreams. And I'm doing this podcast thing. And I remember one day he was gone for the day and I was walking around the kitchen. And I remember thinking I'm the brokest probably I've ever been at this point. I've already used up all my money. I have no prospect of love and I'm as single as you can be. And I'm also the most fulfilled I've ever been. And there's something with that. I don't know why I never recognized that. I had never really felt fulfillment up until that point, but I was maybe for the first time in my life proud of what I was doing. And that began the journey of trying to just be able to continue doing that. So step one, I left my job. I am not saying anybody out there should do that. Please do not do that. Step two, I really started to see this mission as a purpose. And it was the first time in my life that I ever really felt like I had a purpose. And then it was, okay, cool. I've dove into the pool. I want to learn how to swim and I want to stay here. I do not want anybody to take me out of this pool. I have to figure out how to make this work. But yeah, step one, I left my job and I got into a new environment around new people. And that was a game changer and a life changer for me for sure.
Yeah, I think you touched it right there, is that community of people who can actually support you and give you the confidence you need. Because, like, in that moment, you probably didn't have very much confidence in yourself.
None, Ryan. I had none. And I borrowed it. Sometimes you have to borrow belief from other people. And that's totally fine. I think, what do? We tend to borrow the emotions of other people anyway. If you hang out, if you grew up with a parent who had a ton of anxiety, you probably adopted that anxiety. And now maybe you're somebody who identifies as anxious. If you're around people who are super confident, that tends to rub off on you. And luckily for me, I got the opportunity to be around those types of people.
That's awesome. Can someone really succeed without struggle?
You will succeed. Well, let's put it this way. You will struggle to the direct level that you want to succeed. So do you have to struggle as much as somebody who wants to make it to the top of the mountain if you only want to make it to the first base camp? Probably not. But by definition, growth requires resistance, and resistance usually is painful to some degree. I always use the gym analogy. If we both go to the gym and your workouts are always easy and you're always happy and you never break a sweat and it's just, oh yeah, I just had another great day at the gym and I'm in there grinding and I'm sweating and I'm struggling and I'm suffering, I know who we would bet on to get the results, right? The person who's really putting in the effort. So I don't think you have to suffer or struggle or sacrifice to the degree maybe I have. But as a podcaster, if you want to make this your full-time job or you want to do 500 episodes or whatever, you're going to have to struggle more than somebody who just starts and says, yeah, just kind of kick the tires and see what happens. If we make it, we make it. So yeah, I believe you have to struggle in direct connection to the size of the goals you have, because the internet doesn't show you this, but success is really freaking hard and achievement is really freaking hard. And it's most likely going to take more of you than you think. It's easy to see somebody on the internet who has it all and assume it was easy. Again, that's why I'm so honest about how terrible this journey has been. Yes, I look quote unquote successful and all that. Yes, that's all great. And it has also been the most challenging thing ever of all time. And somehow it's harder now than it was last year. And I feel like it's going to continue getting harder because we have this goal that we're ultimately never going to hit. And to the point of this question, if my goal is to make it to the top of this proverbial mountain, I'm going to have to suffer more than somebody who just wants to see it from a distance. And I think we're all kind of signing up for that, whether we know it or not, depending on what your unique goals are.
Yeah. I love how you touched on that about suffering and having to go through it, through the pain and everything. Most times on the internet, all you see is the success. And even like this sports analogy, they show you all the glory, but they don't show you the struggle that went into it.
Yeah, I try to be very transparent. I just bought a new car recently. Got a nice new BMW. Awesome. And it also is extremely challenging every month to pay for it. It's like, that's a lot of money. Yes, there's success under it. And yes, there's nice things. But in order to keep those nice things, you have to work harder than you did to get them. And that's what people, they just conveniently leave out. Everybody talks about what happens when you get success. Nobody really talks about sustaining success. And those are very, very different things. Oh, you just got your dream relationship. Amazing. Now, be a better partner every day for the rest of your life. Awesome. Oh, you just had children. Amazing. Now, you don't get to sleep for a while and you got to put the children over yourself and boom, and everything's more expensive, blah, 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 blah. The sustaining of success, I think, might be harder than achieving it in the first place, honestly.
Yeah. And I use a sports analogy. It's easier to be the hunter than the hunted.
100%. 100%.
So you are the founder and host of Next Level University, a podcast that promotes personal development. What inspired you to start podcasting?
Like a lot of people, in 2015, 16, 17, I was listening to a lot of Joe Rogan at the time. And that was a big piece of it. And then for some reason, I had a lot of activity on Snapchat at the time. I was using Snapchat a lot. And I would literally coach people through Snapchat that I had never met before. And I remember in 2016, before I was even thinking of doing a podcast, I did a video on Facebook, and my thesis in this video was, you do not deserve anything that you don't work for. And that essentially was my first ever podcast episode without knowing it. So I think it got to a place where I felt like I wanted to use my voice to impact other people. Podcasting was this up and coming new thing. And to connect the dots and tie it up with a bow, my business partner, who was just my friend at the time, he had a YouTube channel that he was starting. And he said, I want to interview you about fitness, mindset, and discipline. And I was like, all right, you can. It's not going to be good. I've never done this before. It's going to be terrible. We talked for like an hour and a half. It went by in what felt like 5 minutes. And at the end, I said, imagine if you could do that full time. Imagine if you could do that for a living. And one of my friends who was there said, you can. I mean, there's people that do. So that was the bug planted in my brain. It just created an idea that this could be a thing. So yeah, it was the perfect storm of a lot of stuff. I was slowly transitioning into personal development, and I really enjoyed philosophy, and I liked talking, and I wanted to get outside my comfort zone. So it was the perfect storm, I think, of circumstance, opportunity, and probably naivete. Probably the perfect storm of those three to get this thing going.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. And how you just kind of backed into it and it just popped out of nowhere on you.
It is seemingly popped out of nowhere. And then so that's the interesting thing is then when you look back, I had been writing poems on Facebook for years. I was writing music. I wanted to speak. So there was a lot of hints that I didn't recognize at the time. But now when I look back, I mean, it makes total sense. It's just Steve Jobs had this quote, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them when you look back. This is a really good example of that.
Yeah. I like how you touched on it. It's like each step you take gets you a little bit closer to what your purpose truly is.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
What kind of coaching services do you provide?
Man, in the beginning, it was anything. Anything you wanted. If I thought I could help you, I would help you. In the beginning, it was fitness. It was relationship. It was peak performance. It was just anything personal development. Then after that, after I got my feet wet in that and I started doing actual coaching sessions, it was like mindset and peak performance. Then eventually people started asking me for podcast help because I was the quote unquote producer. I've come up with most of the episodes. I've titled basically every episode we've ever done. I just was the producer. I was doing the audio editing. I was doing the video editing for a long time. So people started asking me for help in podcasting. So it went from whatever to mindset, fitness, peak performance, personal development. Eventually it became full-time podcast coaching. And then we were able to build a podcast production company. So it has evolved a lot. And I thought I was going to be a mindset coach for high-level athletes. That's what I thought I was going to do. That is not what I do. I do very different things than I thought. But that is a really good example of how things tend to evolve when you stay in the arena for a long enough period of time. So let's say I was 400 episodes in. I was 400 episodes in. Somebody reached out and said, hey, I want you to produce my podcast. What I'm doing today and the unique direction I'm moving in today would not exist if I stopped at 399 episodes. That's why success compounds to a degree, because you do something long enough to learn a new skill, and then eventually people ask you to help them with that skill, and that becomes a huge piece of what you're doing, even though you never thought that was going to be it. So yeah, it started as very much mindset and peak performance, and now essentially all I do is podcast coaching, speaking coaching, and light business coaching for content creators.
Wow, that's just like a crazy journey from one end of the spectrum to the other.
You're telling me, Ryan. You're telling me, my friend.
That's just crazy. What are the biggest challenges your clients face?
Ooh. For a lot of people, they really struggle with perfectionism. And they want to make sure. I had a moment where I logged on with you where I was like, good for him for doing this with his cell phone. Good for him for not having the perfect everything and saying, well, eventually I'll do it. A lot of people struggle with perfectionism. And if it's not perfect to start, they never start. That is a huge piece of it. Whether people want to admit it or not, a lot of people pay us for accountability. And I think that's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. That's quite literally using necessity to your advantage. So I would say that's a big thing. Just the understanding in business that just because you build something does not mean anything's going to happen. And a lot of people are coaches. A lot of people are talking about similar stuff to you. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do to grow your podcast, to grow your business, to grow your coaching practice. There's a lot of stuff that people aren't talking about online. So just giving people the awareness and the tactics to do that, that's a big thing. And then building confidence when it comes to speaking. Public speaking is one of the biggest fears people have. And if you're a podcaster or you want to be a speaker, you want to be a coach, you're going to impact people using your voice. And for a lot of people, that makes them insecure. So that's something I work on with all of my clients. If I'm talking to a client, we're talking about how to improve our speaking and the craft of speaking. So that's a very, very common one. Does anybody ever come to you with that problem? Not necessarily. But as you work with somebody and as you talk to somebody for long enough, you can start to see, oh, okay, every time you answer a question, you use this word. or you're using a lot of filler words, or these are your railing words. You learn pretty quickly when you talk to somebody for long enough. So I would say those are probably the 3 or 4, however many I gave, problems that people have the most.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with the fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
It's I know there for the longest time. I mean, that was a huge fear of mine. And then when I felt like God called me, He's like, "Hey, I want you to go do this," I was like, really?"
You're not alone. You're not alone in that. It's hard because it really is when you go up to speak, it's just you. There's nobody there. There's nobody to save you. You can prep as much as you want. You can have flashcards or cheat sheets, whatever, but you're still the person up there doing it. And I understand. I'm still afraid of speaking way less than I ever have been. But it took me 150 podcast episodes before I felt like I was relatively good at hosting. And that's a long road before you feel like you're relatively good at anything. So speaking was luckily less, maybe 20 speeches, and it was like, all right, I feel like I'm pretty good at this, but I understand. I never judge anybody when they say I'm afraid of public speaking. I understand. I'm right there with you, my friend.
Why is consistency so important?
Consistency is so important because we are all consistent creatures, just more often than not, we're consistent in the wrong direction. So consistency is you just doing a behavior repeatedly in the direction of your goals. And if you only do something once a week, the odds of you getting really good at it or getting really good results are just not high. If I was to sit down with you, Ryan, and I said, I will give you $1 million if you can do the splits. You are a wrestler, so you might be close to the splits already. I don't know.
Not even close.
Okay. I'll give you $1 million if you can do the splits in 365 days. Let's say you said, yes, I'm in. What is the best way for you to accomplish that? Probably practice every day. But what happens if you say, well, I'll do it 5 times a week. I don't really need to do it 5 times a week. I'm going to do it 4 times a week. I'm going to do it 3 times. I'll just do it once a week. Every time you tick one of those opportunities off, you are less likely to accomplish the goal. And that just is the way it works. The goal acquisition does not care about feelings. It cares about inputs. It cares about consistency. So consistency is the action and the act of doing something repetitively with the desired outcome. It increases the likelihood that you're going to win. It increases the likelihood that you'll get good. And then eventually it becomes a part of your identity. And then you identify as, I am the type of person that can do blank behavior consistently. And then you operate completely differently. I mean, it's literally in our branding. Self-improvement in your pocket every day. Every day. It's in our branding because it's part of our identity now. And I think everybody can get to a version of that. Maybe you don't want to do the same thing every day. But consistency is one of the biggest issues for humans because it's hard to be consistent and emotional. Because some days you wake up and you don't want to do it. And I understand. Same. And then we have to check in with, okay, well, what's the goal? Why did we set the goal? How committed to the goal are we? And then hopefully we can put one foot in front of the other and get it done. But I do think that's one of the reasons that a lot of us aren't as successful as we desire or more successful because we're just not as consistent as we could be.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I mean, the number one thing I hear from working with athletes is, I'm not motivated to do it every day. It's like, really? You're not supposed to be motivated
Right?
every day. That's a feeling. It's about being disciplined. Just keep showing up.
100%. 100%. It would surprise people if I said, look, out of the 3,200 podcast episodes I've recorded, 25% of them I probably didn't want to do. I just didn't feel like it. I wasn't motivated. I wasn't in the right state. I did them. And I got a little bit better, hopefully, every time. But if I only did the episodes I wanted to do, I would not have the amount of episodes I have. Even though I love this and I'm privileged to be able to do it, and this is a dream come true, some days you don't want to do it. You have a headache. I don't want to do it. It's 75 degrees out. I'd rather be outside. Doesn't matter. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to be consistent. We're here to be disciplined.
I love it. How does someone find their purpose?
This is a challenging question that I would say the answer has evolved for me over the years. I believe your purpose is uncovered. I don't think you discover it. I think it's uncovered for you. And usually, from what I have seen, your purpose is helping a certain person or thing overcome or deal with a certain pain or problem in a unique way. Usually one of the things that you struggled with a ton. That's just tends to be the way it is. You can ask yourself questions. What would you do for free that you would feel guilty if you got paid for? That's a great one. That's a great place to start. What do you lose track of time when you're doing? What do you think you can be the best at? Maybe not the best in the world, but the best of yourself. If you had a list of 10 things, what is the thing that you can be the best at for you? And then what would I find you talking about on a Friday night? Just randomly, if you're hanging out with your friends, what are you talking about? And oftentimes, like, what are you afraid to talk about because maybe other people don't get it yet? Those are good questions to ask in terms of finding the purpose. But here's where things get a little wonky, I think. I think many of us already know to a degree what our purpose is. But when we talk about the vehicle, that's where people get stuck. My purpose is not to be a podcaster. It's not to be a speaker. It's not to be a coach. My purpose is to use my voice to help people raise their awareness. Podcasting is a vehicle. Speaking is a vehicle. Coaching is a vehicle. Just like I had. Well, it would be awesome if I was able to do that, but I could never make a living, or but I could never grow a business, or but it could never be sustainable. I think that's for a lot of us where we decide, you know what, this purpose is not realistic because I can't figure out what a realistic vehicle is. And I always suggest people check in with that. Look for the vehicle. Sometimes you find the vehicle before you find the purpose. It just doesn't seem like that because it just doesn't seem realistic for a lot of us to do the things that we want to do. But I think that's where so much of the purpose is made. So that's at least what I've seen. And same thing for me. I thought it would be really cool to talk to people for a living, but it doesn't seem realistic. Podcasting, interesting. All right, let me try that and see what happens. Then eventually things changed and they evolved, but the vehicle, I think, is where a lot of us get stuck, unfortunately.
Interesting. Do you feel like someone's purpose can change over time?
Yeah. I don't have children, nor am I planning on having children, but I can imagine that if I was to have children, my purpose would shift. That would be a new input. That would be a new emotion, a new connection, a new responsibility, a new expectation that I never had before. My purpose would have to shift in some way. So yeah, I definitely think it can. Do you want it to? That's the conversation. One of the reasons I'm not having children right now is because I know it would take away from this. That's a conscious decision because I don't want my purpose, my mission, my passion to change. But yeah, I definitely think it can. And I think you should give yourself permission to let it change. It's your purpose. It's your mission. It's up to you. If you don't enjoy doing it, it's probably not going to be a very successful purpose in the first place.
How can people become more confident?
3 steps in an oversimplified way. 3 steps. State, prove, self-assign. So let's say what do you want to do to be more confident? We'll use speaking because we already used that as an example. Okay. In order to build more confidence, in order to build more belief as a speaker, you have to state, okay, I am going to do a speech next week. Cool. Then you have to prove to yourself that you're capable of doing it by showing up and putting in the reps. And then the big one that I think a lot of us don't do is you have to self-assign. And you have to say, I did that. I said I was going to do it. I did it. Now I'm going to give myself credit. Now, what happens, I think, often is we are embarrassed to state the things that we believe we can actually do. So as an example, I was speaking one time. I was on stage and I got off and somebody came up to me and said, I want to be a speaker. And I said, interesting. What do you think we should do? They said, I probably have to start speaking. I said, that's it. There you go. It's that simple. And I said, but we have to get you speaking at the right place, at the right time, in the right amount. So if you were to do what I just did and speak to that audience, on a scale of 0 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone would that be? And they said 15 out of 10. I couldn't do it. Cool. That's not where we start. what if I asked you to just record yourself on your phone and show nobody? And they said, that's probably only like a 2 out of 10 outside my comfort zone. Okay. What if you recorded a speech on your cell phone and you sent it to me, and I promise I won't send it to anybody else? And they said, that would probably be a 5 out of 10. I said, do you feel like you have 5 out of 10 confidence? They said, yep. Cool. Let's do that. They stated they were going to do it, and they proved to themselves that they were going to do it, and then they self-assigned the fact that they did it. And if you do that enough with consistency, with discipline, that is where real confidence is built. I know I probably seem like I'm very confident doing this. I have just done it 3,000 times. I was not confident like I am today, 100 in or 200 in or 500 in or 1,000 in. It's just the reps. I stated I'm going to do it. I proved to myself that I was going to do it. And then I self-assign, oh, wow, maybe that went better than I thought. Or that person gave me some really good feedback or whatever it is. So yeah, the simplest form is you state you're going to do it. You prove to yourself that you're capable of doing it. And then you self-assign. And if we think of the opposite and what we talked about earlier, being stuck, you say you're going to do it. You don't do it. And then you beat yourself up. That feels like it's stuck. You don't say you're going to do it. Somehow you get lucky and it happens, and then you can't self-assign it because it feels like it was luck. And then you get stuck in this loop where you don't feel like you're in control of your outcomes, unfortunately. And I have been in all those loops, but I can tell you, state, prove, self-assign, that is the best one to be in.
Nice. Like I always tell everybody too, like especially when I work with the athletes, is like your confidence comes from doing hard things that no one else thinks you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to prove through action. What is confidence? Confidence is certainty. Confidence is just certainty in yourself or in the environment. When you go to a restaurant that has 5 stars and a bunch of really good reviews, you're confident that it's going to be good. You have very high levels of certainty. Probably not when you go to McDonald's. That's not why we go to McDonald's, right? So that's a really big piece of it. I think confidence, belief, certainty, those are all kind of intertwined.
Why is self-awareness so important?
Because you can't work on something you don't understand. If you could, mechanics would be out of business, doctors would be out of business. You wouldn't need anybody else's help. You could just do it all yourself. And I think that's a really important understanding. At the end of the day, you have this vessel, yourself, for the entirety of your life. And if you don't understand what buttons do what, you're never really going to be in control. And you're never really going to be able to dictate your outcomes. And you're probably always, unfortunately, going to feel like you're more of a victim than you are a creator. And so much of that is because you just don't understand yourself yet. And that was my biggest issue for the longest time. And that's why I became so passionate about self-awareness, because I had none. I didn't have any. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, and it got me into so much pain and so much trouble. So it's very hard to influence something that you don't understand. If you don't understand yourself, it's really hard to get the results that you want. If you don't know what motivates you, if you don't know what triggers you, if you don't know what scares you, if you don't know why, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to put together a little plan of success here. Just like if you don't know how to fix your cell phone, you have to take it somewhere. I think self-awareness is the same thing. That's why coaching is so important, because somebody's helping you find self-awareness and goal acquisition awareness and habit awareness. But you can start on your own. This personal development, learning, reading books, journaling, meditating, counseling, therapy, all of that is really, really good for self-awareness. And I won't say it's always great. It doesn't always feel good to learn something about yourself, but hopefully it'll always be worth it, is the thought at least.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think self-awareness is like one trait that a lot of people are missing, that piece of the puzzle to take them to that next level.
For sure. And again, it kind of sucks at times.
Yeah, it hurts.
It hurts. It hurts. So I empathize with somebody who says, I don't really want to know that about myself. I get it. But if you think it will be worth it, and if you have a goal that requires you to become more self-aware, that's something that is at least worth looking into. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because I'm not the one who has to deal with the repercussions, but it's the best thing I've ever done for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. So how important is vulnerability in all this?
Oh my goodness. It's unbelievably important from a connection perspective. So we can even use this conversation as an example. If you let's say you came with 20 fire questions like you have, and I just gave you one word answer and I didn't open up at all, this would be garbage. It wouldn't be good. There would be no fun. We wouldn't have any laughs. There probably would be very little value. I think vulnerability is reality. Being vulnerable is being yourself. And being vulnerable is letting people, the right people at the right times, see the real versions of you. And as humans, if we want to have really deeply meaningful relationships, we have to be ourselves. And the only real way to be yourself is to be vulnerable. So it is supremely important. And again, it's one of those things that's really hard because depending on the people you surround yourself with, vulnerability is not allowed. Oh, every time I'm vulnerable, this person laughs at me. I'm not going to want to be vulnerable. Or every time somebody is vulnerable around this person, they talk trash behind their back. If I'm vulnerable with them, are they going to do the same thing? It's very possible. It's very realistic. But I think so many of us feel the desire to be seen and really seen and felt and heard. I don't know if you can really do that until you're being yourself. And I know a lot of us want to find our people. Where are my people? I want to find my people. I don't think you can really find your people until you're yourself. And that is the process of being vulnerable. And I think the last piece of it is it's so important because it's easy not to be. It's easy to hide behind ego. It's easy to pretend things don't bother you. It's easy to act like you don't have any feelings, but none of that is true. That's one of the reasons it's most important because it's hard and it's challenging and it sucks at times. But the other side of it is also filled with fulfillment and connection and hopefully safety and people being vulnerable back with you and your relationships getting better. So it is incredibly important, incredibly valuable, and definitely a challenge depending on who you spend time with.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with like most men are being like told that being vulnerable is bad.
100%. Yeah. I didn't know my dad. I didn't grow up with a dad. I wonder if I would think differently if I did. I didn't have a male role model saying it was toxic or it was bad to cry or it was weak to cry. I didn't have that. Would I think differently if I did? Probably. And I'm grateful I don't. But yeah, somebody's got to go first. That's the hardest part is if, let's say you're a man out there and you have a bunch of male relationships and in your group, it's not cool. Somebody's got to lead the charge on that. And if you're brave and you value it and you think it would be worth it, maybe it's got to be you. I remember I was into personal development before most of the people in my friend group, and I learned about vulnerability earlier than most of the people in my friend group. And I remember after we would hang out, I would hug my friends and I would say, I love you. And I remember, Ryan, the first time I did it, one of my friends was like, dude, what are you doing? And I was like, don't worry about it, man. Just trust me. This will make sense eventually. And it got to the place where we all did that. We call each other, hey man, how you doing? I miss you. I love you. That just became normal. And I think my relationships got better because of it.
Yeah. How many friends did you lose because of that?
Honestly, none. Yeah, no, I didn't lose any. I didn't lose any because of that. Because I think all of my friends wanted they all wanted it. They just were afraid to go first.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Yeah. I know that like when I had to go through all my personal development stuff that I lost a lot of friends in that process because they just weren't right for me as I was growing.
Yeah. Well, I lost some as well, not necessarily just because of the vulnerability piece. Honestly, this is one of the hardest questions ever, but I think it's one of the most valuable ones. Are the people in my life the best from my past or the best for my future? That's a really challenging question. Are you friends with the people you're friends with because you went to high school together, because you went to college together, because you used to drink together, because you used to play video games together? Or are you spending time with people in your life because they're going to help you get to the next level and you're going to help them get to the next level? I'll never forget. I was dating a young lady in, 2000, I don't know. It was a while ago before I got married. And she said, I want to meet your friends. And I said, awesome. I'll introduce you to my friends. It'd be great. And I began to explain the two friends that she was going to meet. And I said, one is he's like my big brother. He's going to be so curious about you. He's going to love you. He's the man. It's awesome. You're going to love him. And then I said the other one, and I paused. And I said, he's going to make fun of you. He's going to make fun of me to you in front of me. He's going to say some dumb stuff. He's not as funny as he thinks. He's honestly kind of disrespectful. And I said, imagine if somebody had to prepare their partner to meet me like that. And I could never look at that relationship the same again. And that relationship ended up drifting apart to the point where I haven't talked to that person in 6 years, 7 years at this point. And it sucks and it's sad. And I think about that person all the time. And I just don't think they were what's best for my future. And honestly, I think I probably would have been a pain in the ass for them anyway. I don't think they wanted to grow in this direction. And I don't want to make somebody grow in this direction if they don't want to.
Yeah, I completely agree. It sounds like some of my friends that I grew up with that I had to separate myself from.
Yeah, it's common.
What's the most powerful advice you could give to an early entrepreneur?
Don't be entitled. Don't be entitled. You have to earn it. You can't just charge whatever you want because you want to charge that amount of money. It doesn't work like that. That doesn't work in the real world. That's not how it's set up. That would be a big piece. And then the other piece would be you can get pretty far by just multiplying your strengths. If you're really good at something, you can make a meaningful amount of progress and build a meaningful amount of momentum by just going all in on that one thing. I think that's the reason entrepreneurs that are good at sales tend to excel. Just go sell something for a long period of time and you'll get better at sales, and that's your strength. So yeah, really lean into your strengths until your weaknesses become a bottleneck, and then delegate, partner, whatever, learn, whatever it is, whatever that's going to be for you. But your strengths can get you pretty far before you really need to work on the weaknesses. I'm not saying do that forever, but as an early entrepreneur, you're probably more skilled in something than other people / than in other arenas for yourself. That would be the advice I would give. Yeah. And if you're in a relationship, try your best to, number one, explain what this will do to your relationship. And number two, express this journey to your partner, because somebody said this to me. I don't know who came up with it, but the only thing worse than being an entrepreneur is dating one or being married to one. So it's important to try to convey how challenging it will be.
Why do you say that?
There's just a lot of uncertainty, and it's different. It's just, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a business owner and I work for myself, but the 4th of July is coming up. I'm working. I work almost every day. I work every weekday other than maybe like Christmas and Christmas Eve. I work my birthday. I work Valentine's Day. I work when I travel. It's up to you. And there is no safety net, and there's no health insurance, and there's nobody saving you. And if stuff hits the fan, which it most likely will at some point, you're the person people call in. And it's a lot. There's no clock. There's no 9 to 5. There's no punching in. There's no punching out. Sometimes you have to prioritize the business over everything else because the business is the thing that is sustaining the lifestyle. And I think, again, going back to social media, it looks really sexy. Ryan, on social media, it looks really sexy to be an entrepreneur, but it's not always. It's not. Yes, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there is no ceiling. Love that. But there is also no safety net. And unfortunately, most people fall, and very rarely do people actually make it if you look at the stats. So just communicating to your partner, to your family, to your friends, look, I'm going in a different journey. Here's a good example. One of my good friends had a death in the family recently, and the wake is tomorrow. It's from 4 to 8. I'm going to get there at like 7:40. I'm going to get there 20 minutes before the wake ends because I have a full day. I have coaching calls. We have group coaching, and then I'm going to drive an hour and a half. I want to be there, but I'm not going to be there in the way that maybe people want me to be, or maybe the way everybody else is going to be, just because that's just not the circumstances. And it would be irresponsible of me to just cut out of work for the day lose momentum and put the business in some sort of risk. It wouldn't be the best, most long-term decision, unfortunately.
Wow. I mean, you really touched on a lot of stuff right there where, you kind of tell everybody how it truly is.
It's important. I don't want, look, if you feel stuck in life and you're like, you know what, I think I should start a business. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it's probably going to be harder than you think. And I wish I knew that going in, for sure.
What's your biggest fear and how did you overcome it?
My biggest fear is disappointing men. My dad left when I was young. I think I thought it was my fault, even though I was a baby. And honestly, I haven't overcome it yet. I've made friends with it. I've worked on it. I have coexisted with it, but it's still something I think about often. It's still something I'm working through. It's still something I get triggered by. The hard thing about fears in general is for most of us, the only way to really get through it is to get through it, is to work through it, is to deal with it. So I have had a lot of opportunities, unfortunately, to disappoint people over the last 8 years. And every time that happens, I check in with how I'm feeling. I check in with what's actually real. I check in with how is the relationship? How can I fix the disappointment? And honestly, I don't think I've ever disappointed somebody maybe one person, one client we had that just, they weren't a great client, but I also made mistakes. Other than that, I don't know if I have a person that I disappointed that I couldn't reach out to and have a conversation with. And that to me is really, really big growth. Somebody was interested in working with us and they said something really interesting. Nobody's ever said this to me before. They said, send me 3 referrals of clients that love you and send me 1 story of a client that doesn't love you. And I was like, oh no, interesting. Interesting. So I sent 3 clients that were awesome, cool. And then I was like, all right, what's the best case for this? And I sent over a paragraph about how we worked with this person. And there were certain things we didn't understand and we just didn't do a very good job. And then I messaged them the next day to see how they were doing. And that for me was a really cool full circle moment of that person was disappointed in me. And I still had the opportunity to reach out to them and we're on good terms. So that's a really good example in real time of my greatest fear has come true many times and it's never been as bad as I thought. And that's reassuring for me.
Yeah. Did that kind of make you a people pleaser growing up too then?
No, in a weird way, I'm a loner because I feel like if I don't sign up for something, I can't really disappoint you. That's the piece of me going to this wake is I said I would be there because I wanted to do what was right. And now I have to do it because I said I was going to do it, because if I don't do it, I'm going to disappoint this person. So you can also use it as leverage against yourself to do things that are the right thing. Just very honestly, I'm not necessarily the type of person that would just think to go support someone. As weird as that might sound as somebody who has a self-improvement company, just because I don't receive love in the same way that other people receive love. I don't feel support maybe in the same way other people feel support. So sometimes I have to leverage that fear against myself to make sure I actually do the thing that's best for all parties.
What is one book you'd recommend for personal development or mindset?
It's literally called Mindsets by Carol Dweck. Great book. Talks about the difference between fixed mindsets, like we talked about earlier, and growth mindsets. That is a really good book. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a really good book. What else? If you're an early entrepreneur, anything by Jim Collins is great. I'd say start there. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is a great book for anybody in the mindset space. Yeah, any of those books, you're going to be off to the races.
Nice. So I think I already know the answer to this question, though. How important has personal development and mindset been for you?
It's everything. Yeah, it's everything. I am just a, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the sum of all the things I've had the opportunity to learn and unlearn and practice and stop practicing. At the end of the day, the person you see in front of you is I'm just a representation of all the things I've learned, right? How many of these things that I said are not even my own sayings? They're just my representation of something I learned. Everything, right? I didn't come up with these words. I didn't come up with almost anything I'm saying. I'm just saying it in a way that would resonate with me. So yeah, it's everything. I wouldn't be as confident. I wouldn't be able to be as good of a partner. I wouldn't be able to be as good of a business owner. I wouldn't be able to handle the pressure and the stress. I wouldn't be able to be disciplined enough to go to bed when I know I should. It's everything. I owe all of my success and all of my fulfillment to personal development and doing what is best for future Kev, not necessarily what is most comfortable for current Kev.
I love that answer right there. Like throwing comfort out the window because, our mind always seeks out pleasure and runs away from pain.
Yes, it does. And if you can run away from pain, but pain's waiting for you somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So we got to develop the skills to battle through it.
Exactly. What are your short-term and long-term goals?
Long-term goal is to have the most successful personal development company on the planet. That is what we're aspiring to. That is why we do as many episodes as we do. That's why we do things the way we do. So that's the long-term goal. And then just a personal one, mine is to be as fulfilled as humanly possible. That's a big piece of it. And if I could get to the place, Ryan, where I am able to donate $10 million throughout my life, that would be really freaking cool for me. So that's a little personal goal I have. If I could donate $10 million or help people with $10 million, that would literally be a dream come true. So that's something I aspire to a ton. Short term, just to keep getting better. Yeah, I mean, right now I'm on a weight loss journey. So I'm cutting down to 168 pounds. I'm at 174. That's cool. We have some financial goals we're setting this year where we're completely out of debt. No more debt in the business, no more personal debt. So that's a grind that we're on right now. And then after that, more of the same, probably. Yeah, more of the same. We're very regimented. I'm boring. I do the same thing pretty much every day. The goal is just to get as good at this as possible and grow the business and grow the love of my family and grow the love of the team and grow myself.
Awesome. I don't think everybody understands that part about it. I mean, that regiment is what keeps you going and why you've been successful, though.
It sucks too, but it sucks in the best way. I was thinking of this the other day. I couldn't tell you, and this isn't like the hustle porn. I'm not saying that. This isn't hustle porn. But I don't really know the last time I didn't get up at 6 in the morning. I get up at 6 every day and I love it. I don't love it when the alarm goes off, but I love getting to the gym at 6:30 on a Sunday and there's nobody there. And I just feel like, okay, this is what it's about. So yeah, it's discipline. I know discipline has kind of been villainized in certain groups and hustle and grind has been villainized. I'm not telling you to grind more than you want the payoff for. There's no sense in doing an episode every day like we do if you don't want to be really successful at podcasting. No stress. But you can align your grind. And I think that's what it's about for all of us, aligning your grind with what you want your life to look like.
I completely agree. How can people get a hold of you?
Man, search Next Level University. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube. On Instagram, my handle is @NeverQuitKid. And then my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is. I do my own emails, so anything I can do to add value, I am just a message away.
Awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
My goodness. No, I feel like we pretty much touched on everything, all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, final question. Okay. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Ooh. I believe if you have the right tools, adversity can be your advantage. When we first started interviewing people, I remember somebody would tell this incredible story about overcoming adversity. And I would say to my business partner, Alan, we'll probably never hear anything like that again until next week when we heard another unique version of the same story. And eventually we got to the point where we said, okay, your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to do it. And I think I don't have it figured out, so please don't assume I do. I think it's self-belief. I think it is clarity. And I think it is the community of people you have around you. If you're somebody who has really high self-belief, you usually use adversity as fuel. If you have clarity, it helps you pinpoint where you're going. And if you have the right people around you, it helps you move in a positive direction. So just because you have adversity and you've worked through adversity and maybe you're still working through adversity, it does not mean you're bruised, stained, or broken. That actually might be the gasoline that gets you to the promised land later.
I love it. Like, just talking with everybody, the main thing that motivates everybody to keep going is failure. So you kind of touched on that failure is what propels you to that next level.
Yes. I don't know who set it up that way, Ryan. It wasn't my job. I didn't want to set up failure as the thing that has to happen, but I do think it is inevitable, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Hey, Kevin, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your insight with us.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you having me. It was wonderful. Thank you for the research. Thank you for the questions. Much love, my friend.
Hey, not a problem. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.